Everyone has a story, and everyone wants their story to be heard and appreciated. Stories and narrative provide context and meaning for all of us. In this section, we're going to talk about the most important story if you're trying to succeed in the world of virtual interactions, and that's the story of your users. So let's start with the details now on this human realm. Getting into HCI and human-computer interactions, we're going to start with the human part. And I'm going to show you in depth what each of these disciplines include, what they mean, why they're important, and what you need to know for each of them. Most importantly, each of them can be a serious game changer for you in the world, and I'll share with you how they can change your game. We're going to start with that most fundamental principle, which is the user's narrative. Starting now with the human aspects of human-computer interactions, let's begin with the lives of our users, because those users and how they live their lives and conduct their days is at the center of everything you do online. Everything you do must be driven by the stories or the narratives of those humans' lives. When I do this for my clients, I help them capture user stories in the form of narratives. One way to approach narrative is to think of all of the main elements of a story or novel from a user's perspective. For example, understand the setting, gain some knowledge of the characters and the problems that they're trying to solve and the challenges that they're confronted with. Get a sense of the flow or the plot or the storyline and how that unfolds in their life, in their day. Learn the overall tone or manner around how they go about their activities. This all provides a much larger context for really understanding who these people are, what they're looking for, and how all of this fits into their lives and the flow of their narrative. Regardless of the context, whether this is a business or work or professional or a personal context. Now, user research has traditionally been rather local and narrow, and it tends to focus on attempting to identify some set of specific tasks that a user must complete. Now, the tasks may or may not be a natural part of the user's narrative about what they do with their day within the context of what they care about, because the tasks have always been defined by the researcher and not by the user. With this narrative method, we set aside our perspectives and we focus entirely on the user. The goal here is to be entirely objective and really see the user's life and the user's day exactly as it unfolds. Now, there's a tremendous amount of power and insight involved in creating these narratives. And the value of them goes way beyond HCI, but we're going to apply them here in that specific context. The power in these narratives comes when you have the user's narratives articulated, and again, as objectively as possible. The real insights emerge by going back and then articulating your narrative and what you're trying to accomplish, and then integrating that with your user's narrative. Overlaying the two to see where and how they line up is going to give you some really critical insights on how to serve these people and what they need, and whether you're doing a good job of that. So this narrative process is the first step in taking your online game to another level. We always want to get there. That's what the Mastermind Academy is about. That's what this workshop is all about. And it all starts with this user narrative. Now, let's look at a simple example of user narrative. And we're going to use Airbnb. Of course, Airbnb is this website and company that allows private citizens to rent out space to other people. In this case, we're going to explore the narrative of the person traveling who wants a room, as opposed to the person actually doing the renting and one who owns the room. So using the story model I described a moment ago, here's how this narrative unfolds. So for the renter, the setting is the guest's home where they're going to stay. It could be elsewhere, but let's start there. In this example, the characters in this narrative, in the story, will use a young married couple looking for a romantic weekend getaway in a nearby city. Now, the characters in the story has a few supporting individuals in addition to that couple. In this case, they're going to bring their dog, and of course, other supporting characters would include the people that own the property that they may be renting from, their hosts. Now, the situation or the context here, which we could equate to the plot, is the couple has a desire to find the perfect setting for this romantic weekend. The challenge and the need could include a few things. So, for example, finding something dog-friendly, getting a place that's near some good restaurants, finding a unique setting because they want this to be romantic, and they don't want to pay too much, so they have some budget that they're looking to spend on this as well. The eventual outcome or the theme of all of this is the togetherness that they're going to experience and the fun that they're going to have together in this special place for this romantic weekend. And finally, the point of view of the entire story here is key. This couple want the online experience of finding a place. They want this experience to be easy. Obviously, it's do it yourself. They don't want it to be a chore, and they have some specific budget concerns. So how they're going to go online and interact with Airbnb is a pretty critical aspect of this narrative. To help you understand better how this narrative process works in building the right human-computer interactions for a specific audience, the Airbnb team actually created a video to document how they created this narrative and how they used it to design the online experience for Airbnb guests. If you go to the PDF version of my workshop on this slide, you can click this link and watch what's called the Snow White video. You might also be able to Google Airbnb and Snow White video and find it. It's really intriguing. You'll get a better sense of how this case study actually works and how Airbnb put this into action when they designed their own website. So that's the Airbnb case study. Your users and your narratives will likely be entirely different than Airbnb, but hopefully the framework I've shown you here will be useful to understand your audience and the people that you want to interact with. The number of possible narratives is endless. So whether your users are at home, in the office, in the classroom, on the factory or shop floor, on the street, or anywhere, they each have their own story or narrative that will determine when, where, and if you fit somewhere in that story. So why is this important? First of all, it's a fundamental. It goes beyond human-computer interactions by far. It can and should drive all aspects of your business. It's fundamental knowledge of who your audience is, what they do, and where you might fit in that. Capturing the narrative is going to remove you from that scene, and it gives you a chance to be a lot more accurate and objective in your view of the world and your audience and what they do. You're also going to see a fresher, more complete, and more accurate picture of the real world and the real user context in which you're attempting to play. And that's really critical for you to be successful in anything that you do. Finally, this process is about as real and truthful as you can get. And so why wouldn't you want that? Again, in any endeavor, business or otherwise, that you would want to pursue in the world, that objectivity and that sense of where you fit in is going to be really essential. And this narrative process is a great way to get there. So what do you need to know in order to make this narrative process work, in order to reveal what's really happening with your users? You're going to need to decide who your target is and figure out how to engage them in the discovery process. So you can't create narratives in four walls. You're going to have to actually interact with real people to make this happen. And as we go through the workshop, I'm going to show you a number of ways to do that. Depending on your organization, you're going to want to include key people, developers, marketing folks, designers. Anyone who's involved in building the human-computer interactions that you put in the world really needs to be part of this process. Once you've gathered those narratives, you then need to decide how you're going to articulate them. The Airbnb example, if you go watch that video, will show you how they created storyboards, and other people have used photography, drawings. There's ways to do this with video. There's a lot of vivid ways for you to capture this and communicate it to your teams and make sure everyone is really clear on who your audience is and what are the narratives in their lives. And then that'll help you decide what you're going to do with it and how you're going to apply it on all of your processes. And finally, the most important part is you'll need to decide how this information is going to influence what you offer the world and what you're going to offer all your users. In the simplest cases, you may fine-tune how you reach out to them, or you may change the copy you use to communicate with them, and there may be a lot of other things that this narrative will influence. In more extreme cases, these insights about users and their narratives, their world, their stories, may actually cause you to rethink major aspects of your business and your operations. But there's only one way to determine whether you need to do that, And that is, you have to go to your users and you have to understand, you have to ask them and really learn their stories. Now, a key extension of the narrative process that I shared at the beginning of this section is this idea of the doer. How does the buyer buy? How does the learner learn? How within this narrative does somebody then initiate some interaction with you and what you do? The framework for the doer focuses the narrative on that specific set of actions and the precise timing and location of users' interactions with you online. And when we get to the bonus, I will share with you, or when you go download the bonus, I will share with you how that whole doer process works. So that's really important. Okay, so how does this change the game? So whether the user's narrative drive you to minor tweaks or major overhauls in what you do, doing this storytelling can deliver game-changing results if you do it well. First, you're going to learn through this narrative process the most fundamental, essential, relevant insights into the nature of your business and whatever operation you're running. It will guide and inform everything that you do, and it should. Second, you're going to be demonstrating considerable respect and regard for those people that pay your bills and ensure your continued existence. And of course, those are your users, your customers, your prospects, the members of your community or your audience. They decide everything. Through this narrative process, you're going to demonstrate a lot of respect for them and incorporate them into everything that you do. Finally, you personally are going to be more a master of your own domain, more in control of your outcomes and what you're able to accomplish. I know from personal experience, getting masterful at who you are and what you do will, of course, deliver better outcomes. Now, those results can be reward enough in going through this, but this is about more than that. Simply being more masterful and skilled and wise may be even greater personal and professional satisfaction. And depending on what you do and where you are in your creative journey, that may be the greatest possible outcome for you personally and as a professional. Your capacity to learn the finer elements of your art and how that colors your own self-respect and the respect that you earn from others will feel like no other experience in your life. Trust me, I know what this feels like. It's like upgrading major dimensions of your world. Knowing who your users and your audience are, knowing the stories of their lives and what matters to them is going to help you achieve that. That's why I include this in the workshop, and that's why I include it in the Academy.